Early suspension lockouts were just band-aids. But does that mean anything that helps you climb is a band-aid? The Cannondale Jekyll climbed the endless fire roads and loose, techie single track of Killington quicker than any other bike in the test thanks to its Gemini shock. But we would not call it a band-aid.
Our test loop started with a climb, and this bike is kind of got something that's made just for climbing, doesn't it?
And this is not a remote rear lockout.
No.
It is essentially a remote volume spacer installation tool. That is right there on your handlebar whenever you want it. You flip a switch and it just shrinks that volume, makes it more progressive, essentially changes it down to like 130 millimeters of travel in the rear. And I think most importantly, it changes the ride height. So you don't sink as deep into the travel, keeps the seat angle steeper, and it's already a okay seat angle at 75 degrees. So it's like...
It's modern geo.
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I think with that switch compressed, it's the best climber in the bunch.
And it's not like you've given up all traction in the back. You still have that traction, but you're not really wallowing in the suspension. You're not diving, sinking, seesawing about, yet you still have traction and you're riding a little bit higher in the travel too.
What I do appreciate about this type of design, so it's a single pivot and it's really active suspension when it's open, right? Like it kind of sucks to climb it with the switch deactivated. But what's cool is you can activate it and deactivate it so quickly at the handlebar that like you can go from full pedal to full send in an instant, and you don't have to reach down for it. You don't have to compromise, because some bikes you're like, oh, I use it in pedal mode most of the time, and sometimes you'll have like a 30-second downhill and you won't touch it. But with this bike, you're like optimizing every downhill you get by just going click, and that's kind of nice, right? It does get a little bit cumbersome at the bar when you're not used to it, to try to multitask, but it is something I think people get used to.
If you just don't want to get used to it, or if your trails quickly undulate between climbs and descents, you might want a punchier, simpler bike. But the Jekyll is purpose-built for long, demanding climbs that take you places a marathon bike would fear to tread. And once you get there, you'll have its unique geometry and suspension.
Super short chainstays.
Yeah.
420 millimeters. Like
That's hardtail short.
Yeah, right?
There's all these water bars, and I was like trying to manual over the water bars. I'm not very good at manualing, but man, like it's easy to pick the front end up. But like, I don't know, it feels like maybe that was too a fault at like really high speed stuff or something.
And it's not like the front center is short. I mean, it's a relatively long reach. It's a good like 65-degree head angle. I mean, it's a progressive front end, but you kind of feel like you're on this kind of shortish, I don't want to say twitchy, but not a limo.
And also it's what we're riding, higher speed stuff, super chattery, kind of hoping that something that's a little bit longer wheelbase will smooth things out a little more.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about kind of the performance of the shock itself?
Lots of control. I think those DPX2 shocks seem to manage oil pretty well. It's not. It doesn't feel like you're just riding off the air spring, but the shock wasn't terribly progressive. Like I was going through travel pretty quickly.
And you can put a volume spacer on this. That's kind of like a confusing thing. It's like, oh, you have this remote volume spacer. That's all it can do. But no, you have to get a special volume spacer. But you can plug some things in there to make them a little more progressive.
What did you guys think of kind of slower speed descending, sort of line choosy stuff?
I mean, I was super happy with it in that sense. I mean, it almost feels true to that Cannondale roots of
And
like,
East Coast nature of like big chunky stuff. It has a pretty high bottom bracket too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I kind of noticed that with climbing, I wasn't really hitting the pedals too much. And then in descending, much easier to maneuver for the slower speed stuff, where it became kind of really a line choice moment.
It also kind of has a little bit higher standover. And that's something that you look at the silhouette of this bike versus the silhouette of some of the other bikes, it's significantly less lower slung. I mean, part of that's because of the way they did the front triangle. I mean, they made room for a bottle cage and the shock is really high. But there's other single pivot bikes that manage to get the shock lower and get the standover lower.
So we're at kind of an interesting time in the bike industry. We have consumer direct brands, we have traditional bike shop brands. It's getting harder and harder for us to figure out, is this good value? Is it not a good value? So in terms of this bike, the Jekyll, for a bike shop bike, what do you think? This retails for $6,000. You get X01 components. a Fox 36 float, and you're getting the Gemini system. Are we getting a good deal here?
Well, you do have a carbon front end, alloy rear end, but big old carbon swing link. And I don't know, component spec, I think I wished for a more tunable fork. It has a Fit 4. I like the HSCLC Fox 36 a little bit more. Overall, I would say like it's kind of in line with other bike shop bikes. Like you said, it's hard to beat value of some of the mail order stuff. But you know, you buy Cannondales at bike shops, and if you are looking for that experience, you know, it is a pretty special bike.
If you like techie trails and techie bikes, the Jekyll might be just what you need. But check out the rest of the 27.5 Enduro bikes we tested, and subscribe to us on YouTube so you don't miss any of the other Bible summer camp videos.